It started the way most unremarkable afternoons do. Too quiet to notice until you realize you've been listening to the hum of a refrigerator for 10 straight minutes. I was at the corner cafe again, the one across from the laundromat. The kind of place where the barista knows your order, but not your name. I came here because it felt like neutral ground. No memories attached. Just coffee static and a window that looked out onto people who still had somewhere to be. That's where she walked in. She wasn't new to the place. I'd seen her before, sitting near the window with a book she never seemed to read past page 20. My stepmom, Karen, would mention her sometimes. Oh, that's Leah, my friend from work. She's been through a lot. That's what people said when they didn't want to say divorced. Today, Lee looked tired in a way that made tired seem like a choice. Gray sweater, hair pulled back loosely, the kind of makeup that just looked like good skin. She smiled at the barista, then at the floor, and then, briefly, at me. It wasn't a long look, but it was one of those glances that felt like an accident you don't want to fix. I pretended to scroll my phone. She sat 2 tables away, near enough for her perfume to drift over when someone opened the door. Something soft, clean. When the barista called my name wrong again, she laughed under her breath. You should correct him, she said, without looking up. I shrugged. I've been meaning to for about a year. She finally looked at me then. Straight on, that's commitment. I smiled. Or laziness. She smiled back. And that felt like the start of something. Not big, just noticed. We kept running into each other like that. Every few days, like a loop that neither of us was trying to break. I learned small things about her. She liked her coffee black, but always added sugar when she thought no one was watching. She read half a book and left the rest folded open like a question. She never wore a coat, no matter how cold it got. And she remembered things. My usual order. The fact that I worked evenings. Once, she even said, roast shift yesterday, before I could take off my jacket. I didn't know how to answer that. It wasn't flirting. Not really. It was something quieter. Like recognition. Like seeing the same tiredness in someone else and realizing you weren't the only one still pretending to be okay. Sometimes I'd catch myself watching her hands. The way she stirred her coffee even after the sugar dissolved. The way she folded her napkin carefully into quarters before leaving. I'd think about saying something, anything, but I never did. Because what do you say to someone who already seems to know? The last time I saw her that week, she came in late, right before closing. The barista had already started stacking chairs. She ordered tea this time, not coffee. She sat across from me without asking. The air between us felt full of things that didn't need words. You look tired, she said softly. So do you. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. We have to stop, you know. I blinked. Stop what? Her voice wavered just slightly. Whatever this is. I wanted to say something smart, something that could hide how fast my pulse was moving. But what came out was quiet, steady, not until you say it twice. For a second her eyes flicked to mine, sharp, startled, then soft. The silence after that felt like the longest part of the day. She stood up first, picked up her cup. Good night, Daniel. She'd never said my name before, and just like that, she left. Door swinging shut, a bell that didn't quite finish ringing. When I looked down, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You left your book here. I hadn't brought one. I didn't text her back right away. For 2 days I convinced myself not to. Told myself it was a mistake, maybe meant for someone else. But every time I reached for my phone, my thumb hovered over that message. You left your book here. By the 3rd day, I replied, what book? No response. That evening, after work, I walked into the cafe like I wasn't hoping to see her. But there she was, same table, same half-read book. Only now, my name was scribbled on a sticky note stuck to the cover. She looked up when I stopped beside her. I thought you might come for it. I picked up the book. The collected poems of Raymond Carver. The spine was cracked, pages soft from use. You marked a few, I said. I always do, she replied, folding her hands. The parts I wish I'd written. I sat down. The chair scraped the floor too loudly. We didn't talk much. Just the low sound of the espresso machine, the slow stir of her tea. Then she said quietly, used to read this with my husband. Before he left. It hung there. Not dramatic, just factual, like she was describing the weather. I didn't know what to say, so I said the wrong thing. Do you still talk to him? She smiled, almost kind. You don't talk to ghosts. I wanted to ask what kind of ghost I was becoming to her. But I didn't. Instead, I said, Karen said you teach at the community college. Her mouth curved slightly. You mean your stepmom? Yes, there it was, the thing that made all this feel tilted. My stepmom's friend. Every shared glance, every quiet exchange, suddenly edged with something fragile, something that couldn't exist in daylight. She noticed my silence and looked away. You're thinking too much, I laughed softly. That's kind of my thing. Dangerous habit, she said. Thinking turns small things into stories. We lingered long after our cups were empty. She mentioned how she couldn't sleep lately, how she listened to the same old record at night just to fill the air. I told her how I'd been ignoring calls from people I used to hang out with. She nodded, like she understood the shape of that loneliness. When it started to rain outside, she reached for the window latch and hesitated. I stood up to close it for her. Our hands brushed, just fingertips, but it was enough to make the air feel heavier. Neither of us moved right away. She let out a small breath and said, You really should get out more. Maybe, I said, but I like the view from here. Her eyes lifted to mine then, steady, unreadable, the kind of look that asked a question but didn't wait for an answer. When she finally gathered her things, she slipped the book into my hands. Keep it, she said. Maybe you'll find something I missed. I nodded. But what I really wanted to say was I already have. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. The cafe felt different after that day. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was her. Or maybe it was the way silence started meaning too much. I'd stopped coming on weekends, but she still did. I knew because Karen mentioned it once over dinner, offhand, casual. Lee said she ran into you at the cafe again. You two must be addicted to caffeine. She said it with a smile, not suspicion. But I heard something else under it, something like notice, so I stopped going for a week, just to see what would happen. By the 8th day, I caved. Walked in just before closing. She wasn't there. The chair by the window sat empty, her usual napkin folded perfectly on the table like a ghost of a habit. Then I heard her voice, behind me. Didn't think you'd come back. She stood near the counter, holding a paper bag, her hair still damp from the rain. I wasn't sure I should, I said. Leah smiled faintly. That's probably the first reasonable thing you've said. She gestured to the seat. I sat. She didn't. Just leaned against the table, looking at the rain. I didn't mean for any of this to be strange, she said. Karen trusts you. She likes having you around. I don't want to make that complicated. Her words were even, but her fingers tightened around the paper bag. I stared at my coffee, steam curling and fading. You think that's what this is? She didn't answer right away. Then, I think it could be. We sat in that almost silence again. The kind that holds everything you can't name. She finally sat across from me, unwrapping the bag, a small lemon muffin, slightly crushed. She broke it in half and slid a piece toward me. You don't even like lemon, I said quietly. Maybe I changed my mind. Her eyes lingered on me for a second too long. Then she blinked, like she'd remembered something. Karen invited me to dinner this weekend, said you'd be there. That twisted something in my chest. Are you coming? She hesitated. I shouldn't. Because of me. The question slipped out before I could stop it. She looked down, torn between a laugh and a sigh. Because of me, she said softly. Someone came in then. A young couple, laughing too loudly, dripping rainwater onto the floor. Lee's chair scraped as she stood, her body shifting back into normal posture, polite distance. We both knew what the interruption meant. She reached for her bag, fumbling with the zipper. I moved to help, my hand brushing hers. Barely a second, but it felt like more. Her breath caught. Don't, she whispered. Not sharp, just scared. I pulled back, palms empty, but she didn't move away. Not completely. Her voice was low when she spoke again, almost lost under the sound of the espresso machine. Sometimes I think we talk too much. I looked at her, really looked, and said, sometimes we don't. She met my eyes, and for one impossible moment everything paused. The rain, the voices, the air. If I had leaned forward just an inch, if she hadn't turned her face away, it would have happened. Instead, she stood, steadying herself with a quiet breath. "I'll see you at dinner," she said. And then she was gone again, out the door, into the rain that never seemed to end. Dinner at Karen's house felt like walking into a room where the walls already knew your secrets. Lee was there before me, of course she was. Sitting at the end of the table, helping Karen with the salad, sleeves rolled up, laughing at something I didn't hear. It was an easy laugh. The kind that came too naturally for someone who'd told me we should stop. I kept my distance at first, took my seat, avoided her eyes, but she kept glancing over, quick, almost invisible. Once, when Karen left to answer a call, our eyes met. She mouthed hi, just that. And I didn't know what to do with it. Later, after dinner, Karen insisted we walk Lee to her car. The night was cold, and the streetlights hummed with that pale yellow flicker that makes everything look older than it is. Karen lingered behind to take a call, leaving us halfway down the street. Leah folded her arms. "You've been quiet all night." "Trying to be good," I said. Her breath came out as a small laugh. "How's that working for you?" "Not great." We stopped near her car. The wind moved her hair across her face. She didn't push it back. "I saw you talking to that girl," she said suddenly. "At the cafe. The one with the green scarf." It took me a second to remember. "She's a barista." She was just. "You don't have to explain," Lee interrupted, voice softer than the words deserved. But she didn't move. Something about the way she said it, too quick, too casual, made me realize what it really was. Jealousy, threaded with guilt. I said quietly, "You care." Her eyes met mine then, sharp, startled, and so human it hurt. She didn't deny it, didn't confirm it either. Just looked at me like someone standing too close to the edge. We stood there, both of us half in shadow, half in the yellow streetlight. "I'm not supposed to feel like this," she said finally. "Not with you." "With me," I repeated, barely above a whisper. She nodded once, eyes unfocused. "You remind me of things I thought I'd stopped missing. Things I don't know how to want anymore." I didn't know what to say to that. So I said nothing. The silence filled everything. Cars passed, leaves moved, a dog barked somewhere down the block. But all I heard was her breathing, shallow, steady, uncertain. I took one step closer. Just one. Close enough to see the fine lines near her eyes, the tremor in her lip. She didn't move back. "If we start something," she whispered, "we won't be able to stop." "I know." Her gaze flicked down, then back up. "Then why are you still here?" The answer hovered between us, unsaid. "Because I can't not be. Because you look at me like I'm not temporary. Because you're the only one who talks like silence matters." But I said none of that. I just looked at her, really looked, and asked quietly, "Do you want me to leave?" She didn't answer. Just closed her eyes, breathed in, and let the silence choose for her. She stopped coming to the cafe, no explanation, no text. Just absence, the kind that settles in slowly like fog over a place you thought you knew. For the first few days, I told myself she was busy. Then I started checking the time she usually came in, pretending I wasn't waiting. The chair by the window stayed empty. The barista stopped asking if I wanted an extra cup. By the end of the week, I stopped showing up too. Karen noticed before I could hide it. "You and Leah haven't talked lately," she said, drying her hands after dinner. "She's been quiet. Went to visit her daughter in Portland, I think." That caught me. "Daughter?" Karen nodded, distracted. "College kid. She doesn't talk about her much. I think that's part of why she gets lonely." A daughter. Somehow that word hit harder than I expected. A whole part of her life I'd never been allowed to see. That night, I scrolled through my phone, hovering over her name, not saved as a contact, just a string of numbers I never labeled. I typed out a message, "Hope the trip's going okay." Then deleted it. Typed again, "The cafe feels weird without you." Deleted that too. Ended up staring at the blinking cursor until the screen dimmed. Days passed like static. Work, sleep, replay, repeat. Then one night, I saw her again, by accident. At the grocery store, near the fruit section, hair tied back, wearing a beige coat I'd never seen. She looked different, or maybe I did. She saw me before I could decide whether to walk away. "Daniel," she said, her voice even. I smiled too quickly. "Hey, you've been busy," she cut in, then softened it. "Traveling a bit." She looked at me like she was trying to remember which version of me she'd left behind. How was it? I asked. Strange, she said. Good though. My daughter's older now. Different. Her eyes shifted, like she was somewhere else entirely. She's your age, almost. That word again, almost. We stood there in the too bright aisle, surrounded by oranges and quiet tension. I wanted to ask her what she was really saying. If different meant better off without me. If older meant reminding her too much of me. But all I said was, I'm glad you went. She smiled, a polite practice thing. You should too, someday. Go somewhere. It wasn't advice, it was distance disguised as kindness. When she walked away, I watched her go, slow steps, head tilted down. The cartwheels squeaked once, then disappeared around the corner. I didn't follow, didn't call out. I went home, opened my messages again. Typed, you left your book with me. Should I return it? Then I stared at it until the words blurred, and finally pressed backspace. All of it vanished. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. It had been almost a month since I last saw her. The cafe had changed its playlist. The air smelled different. Even the barista had stopped asking where she'd been. But then one Thursday evening, Karen asked if I could drop something off. A stack of papers Lee had forgotten at her house. Just leave them by her door, she said. She's probably grading. She's always grading. I told myself I'd do just that. Drop them off, leave, no waiting, no talking. But as I stood outside her apartment, hand half raised to knock, I heard her voice through the door. Soft, tired, humming to some old song playing low in the background. I knocked anyway. She opened the door after a pause, surprised but not startled. Her hair was tied up loosely, reading glasses still perched on her head. Karen sent me, I said, holding up the papers like proof of innocence. Leah smiled faintly. Of course. She stepped aside. Come in, just for a minute. Her apartment was smaller than I expected. Books on every surface, a candle burning down to the last inch, half a glass of wine near the sink. She looked softer, realer. We stood there for a moment, the papers untouched between us. You disappeared, I said finally. I know. Was it because of me? Her eyes flicked toward me. Not angry, just tired, partly. And partly because I didn't like who I was around you. I swallowed hard. Why not? She laughed quietly, but there was no humor in it. Because I wanted to stay. That landed somewhere between a confession and a warning. She sat on the edge of the couch, motioning for me to do the same. I did, careful not to sit too close. I keep thinking about that night, she said, after dinner. The things we didn't say. I think about it too, I admitted. Every day, actually. Her hands tightened in her lap. That's not good, Daniel. It's honest, I said. Silence stretched again, long, almost unbearable. Then she said, so quietly I almost missed it. You remind me of what I used to feel before everything got practical. Maybe that's not a bad thing. It is when it costs you peace. The candle flickered, the wick sputtering. She leaned forward to blow it out but stopped halfway. I don't know what to do with you, she whispered. Then don't do anything, I said. Just sit here. And somehow she did. We sat there in that dim light, both of us pretending not to count the inches between our shoulders. She reached for her glass, then paused. You shouldn't be here, she said again, voice shaking now. I know. Her hand trembled, setting the glass down. Then she turned toward me, eyes bright but steady. Then why are you? I didn't think. I just answered, because leaving never felt right. She exhaled. A long, tired sound. Then did something she hadn't done before. She took my hand. Not a romantic touch, not an invitation. Just real, warm, human. Her thumb moved once over my knuckle. Then she looked up at me, eyes wet but calm. Okay, she whispered. And somehow that was enough. It's strange how endings never announce themselves. They just blend into mornings that feel a little less heavy. It's been 6 months since that night in her apartment. We never talked about what the hand holding meant. We didn't need to. It was the quietest kind of understanding, one that didn't ask for a label or an outcome. Now we see each other without the pretense of accidents. No more pretending to bump into each other at the cafe or running errands that lead us to the same aisle. Sometimes she texts first. Sometimes I do. It's enough. Most mornings, I still end up at the same cafe, now at 8:47 a.m., almost on purpose. The barista gets my name right these days. Lee says I must have finally learned to speak up. She usually joins a few minutes later, ordering her usual black coffee, 2 sugars when she thinks no one's looking. We sit by the window, sometimes talking, sometimes just watching the world pass by. There's no tension now, only a quiet, earned calm. She'll read while I check my emails, her foot occasionally brushing mine under the table. It's not deliberate, but it's not an accident either. Once, I joked, "You finally finished that book." She smiled without looking up. Some stories aren't meant to be finished, just revisited. That one stayed with me. On Sundays, I help her carry groceries up the stairs. She insists she can manage, but she lets me anyway. Her apartment feels different now, new curtains, plants that somehow haven't died, fewer empty glasses by the sink. She told me she's been sleeping better. I didn't say it, but I have too. We don't touch much. A hand on the arm when passing something, a small squeeze when saying goodbye. It's not restraint anymore. It's rhythm. One evening, while waiting for the kettle to boil, she said, "You know, I still think about that first time we talked." At the cafe, she nodded. "You were folding a napkin like you didn't know what to do with your hands." I laughed. "And you were pretending not to look." She smiled into her tea. "You make things sound gentler than they were." "Maybe that's how I remember you," I said. That made her quiet, in that familiar, meaningful way. Sometimes I wonder if people would understand us. Probably not, but it doesn't matter. We found something steady in a world that doesn't stop spinning. Something that feels like warmth after a long silence. When she leaves for work in the mornings, she still says, "See you later." Like it's the most natural promise in the world. And she always does. I don't think about what we could have been anymore. Just what we are. 2 people who once mistook loneliness for longing, and learned the difference, together. Sometimes, when she catches me looking at her across the table, she'll whisper it under her breath, almost teasing, almost reverent, "We'll have to stop." And I still answer, quietly, the same way I did back then, "Not until you say it twice."